Hello and welcome, Million Mom Movement family. Today is March 22nd. It's a Wednesday, which is not traditional when we have our lunch and learns. But today we have a very special discussion I'm very excited to bring on today. The biological dentist and my dear friend, Dr. Blanche Grube. And this conversation will be hopefully very illuminating for all. We're going to go deeper into the topic that we went into previously, which is whole body health and the mouth. So this is exciting because not many people really get an opportunity to talk directly to not just a holistic dentist, but a biological dentist. And if you had not yet already seen the first interview, I want you to refer to our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube or any of our Instagram or Facebook group pages, you'll find our YouTube channel, or you could just search Million Mom Movement there, and you can find her previous interview. So last interview, we went through some of the basics, some of the really core basics, the politics of dentistry with amalgams and mercury fillings, and actually her take on how she really has created an entire practice, a clinical practice that avoids the triggers that really create disharmony in the body. So let me quickly give you a little bit of background for those who've never got to watch that first video. We are talking today to Dr. Blanche Grube. She holds a second doctorate in integrative medicine from the Capital University of Integrative Medicine in Washington, D.C. She also received a training in conscious sedation at the Albert Einstein Hospital in New York and at St. Joseph Hospital in New Jersey. To this, she has an extensive training in homeopathy, nutrition, iridology, colon hydrotherapy, neurotherapy, and acupuncture. So she works with her mentor. She has worked previously with her mentor, Dr. Huggins, and she follows this specific protocol when treating patients. Her patient's health would improve. And Dr. Huggins taught her that what is now referred to this Huggins-Grube protocol. And this includes a complete dental revision. So he has passed the torch to her, and she is dedicated to continuing his life's work through the Huggins-Grube Dental Center. She is a biological dentist and the former president of the International Academy of the Biological Dentistry and Medicine, the IABDM, and she holds a mastership in the IABDM, a fellowship from the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, the Institute of Natural Dentistry, and the Dental Association of Conscious Sedation. So I'm going to also just illuminate that she works with her husband in her practice, which is really lovely. And I've met and worked with him directly as a chiropractor, as his patient as well. So they share a practice, a very conscious practice for whole body health. So if there was anything that needed to be further on with health, she could pass the client to her husband right next door. And I had the privilege to really have that experience. And he helped my experience where I had mercury fillings taken out after about 50 colonics, not realizing how systemic inflammation and diagnosis with lupus was brought to me. And I was so relieved that my experience with Dr. Grube and her husband, Dr. Grube as well, they really helped me to reverse my toxic overload. And it really helped me to reverse this autoimmune condition. And when I interviewed her last time, she did not even know that was what had happened. So I'm bringing her back on really because we left off saying that we needed to go deeper on topics like root canals, implants. There's so many other aspects to dental health that people have questions for. So Dr. Grube, how are you doing today? I'll ask you to mute. There you go. You're on.
I think my husband to have one of those buttons so that he can mute me whenever. that would be nice.
We have one for each other.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm excited about a lot of things that are coming up and things that are going to be changing soon, I hope. And hopefully we're going to be changing the whole world. We finally have the opportunity. We is my partner in crime, Anita Tabal, who I wrote the book with called Chew on This, but Do Not Swallow. Chew on This, but Don't Swallow. Well, Anita and I have been working very diligently trying to get the people within the government of the state of Florida to take a look at the mercury issue. Because for the first time, we have a governor and we have a surgeon general of the state of Florida who look at an issue, look to see what's truth and what's not truth. And boy, they just go for it. So we're hoping that Florida will be the first state to ban the use of mercury silver fillings, and that they stop teaching it in the dental schools. Yeah. So if we can accomplish that in Florida, then we know that other states will follow suit. You know, they had the Minamata Convention in Japan, Minamata, Japan. They had that Minamata Convention, gosh, it was like 6-7 years ago. And the United States was the first one to say, yes, you guys are all right. You researchers are right. Come up with a treaty. They came up with a treaty. And of the 47 countries that were at the treaty, the United States was the first one to say, yes, they were going to ratify the treaty, which meant they agreed with the treaty and that they were going to get rid of mercury fillings. Guess what? They haven't done a thing, not a single thing, except to continue to harass the dentists who are mercury free and advertise themselves as holistic dentists. They're still doing that.
So what
So
year,
we're hoping.
Dr. Blanche?
What year was the Minamata Convention? It's 2016. Yeah, so it was a long time ago. The reason it was in Minamata, Japan was because that country, the Minamata Bay inside Japan, was a place where there were hundreds of thousands of people, a very crowded area. And there was a battery company that was dumping their waste into the bay, into the river that flowed into the bay. And the first thing that they noticed was the cats that were eating the fish out of the bay started to develop neurological problems. They started shaking their paws and they started jumping up in the air as if like the, remember the old Mexican beans that we used to put in a container and they would be jumping because it was a little warm inside? Right. So the cats were jumping like that. And everybody was looking saying, what's going on with these cats? They were eating the fish from the bay that was loaded with mercury. And then before you know it, the people in the town started to get the same symptoms. They started having neurological problems in their hands and feet, got crippled, started having this nervous jumping disorder also. And they lost, within a year, they lost 5,000 people from Minamata Bay. And so they've, you know, the whole situation brought to the attention of the world that mercury is toxic and should not be placed in human bodies at all. But then it was forgotten until 1984 when Dr. Hal Huggins wrote his book, Chew on, I know that's my book, Chew on This. Hal Huggins's book was called It's All in Your Head. That book came out in 1984 and he started telling the whole world that they should not have mercury fillings in their mouth. And in that book, he went on to explain about root canals also and implants. So it's been a long time. It's been a long journey. You know, that was almost 40 years ago, 1984. And we're still putting mercury in people's mouths. We're still doing root canals. And I'm hoping I can change that before I pass on to my next adventure someplace else. So I'm very excited about the fact that the state of Florida actually made an appointment with us to talk about the issues. They're very interested they're very interested in doing something about Alzheimer's. And as everybody knows, Florida has the highest number of senior citizens of any other state. So therefore, by definition, since we have so many senior citizens living in Florida, we also have a very high number of senior citizens that have Alzheimer's. And that's a tremendous cost to the state. It's a tremendous cost to Medicare. It's a tremendous cost to Medicaid. I mean, we're talking in the billions of dollars. So if we could provide a test for the citizens of the state of Florida in their 20s or 30s and find out what their APOE number is, and that APOE number determines whether or not they have a high risk for developing Alzheimer's or not. Well, 25% of the population take the APOE test, and 25% of the population come up with the number 4. If you come up with the number 4, if you're a 3-4 or a 4-4, you have a much higher risk of developing Alzheimer's. So what we're saying to the state of Florida is, why not test everybody, find out who's at risk, and the people who are at risk get either, well, better to not ever get a mercury filling. But if
Right.
they have a mercury filling in their mouth, get it taken out properly. And then limit the consumption of fish. And they will improve the chances of them not developing Alzheimer's tremendously. So that's what I'm all excited about. I know you wanted to talk about root canals today, but I'm just so psyched about presenting all of this information and this research to the government in Florida. And hopefully I'll get to meet Governor DeSantis. We'll see. That's our hope.
I hope
Change the world.
And honestly, we'll talk about whatever we need to talk about here. And there's so many areas of question, I think. Our teeth and our mouth is an extension of our brain. And the trigeminal nerve, can you please share how chronic inflammation in the mouth really affects the brain?
Well, okay, you brought up two subjects at the same time. First, we have the trigeminal nerve, and that happens to be on my very long list of questions that I'm going to ask God when I get there. I've been collecting questions over the last 40 years. And so my number one question is, God, why is it that women only have so many eggs, and when they reach a certain age, it's called menopause, and they no longer produce eggs, and they go into gracefully, hopefully go into old age? Why is it that men continue to produce sperm all the way into old age? Some of them can't take care of the children they produced in their 20s, no less the children they produce in their 90s. So that's one of my big questions. My other big question is, why does the human body stop growing at a certain point, except our nose and our ears? So when you take a look at old people, you will notice they all have big noses and big ears, and some of them really look funny. I'm not really quite sure what the purpose of that was. I haven't figured. These are things that I questions that I just cannot figure out. And the third one has to do with dentistry. God created the brain with 12 major pathways. We call them the cranial nerves. And those 12 major pathways leave the brain and all go to different parts of the body. But when it comes to the head, the fifth cranial nerve, which is known as the trigeminal, it does almost everything in the head. So you have the trigeminal. We always take a hand and go like this when we're talking about the trigeminal, because you have the top branch was the temporalis branch that goes to the temporal and the top part of the head, right? And then you have the ocular part, and then you have the subocular part. And then before you know it, you get down here to the mouth, and you have the same trigeminal nerve that does the head, the middle part, the lower part, the same, does the ears. That same trigeminal nerve has branches that go to all 32 teeth. Oh my Lord. Very, very poor design. And I'm going to speak to him about that, because you can have a toothache down at the bottom of your jaw, but you feel the pain up at the top. You can have a toothache in the back and you feel the throbbing in the front. What the heck is that all about? There should be a separate, yeah, there should be a separate trigeminal nerve, a separate cranial nerve for each one of the teeth. And why does Blanche have the audacity to tell God that we should have a separate nerve for each one of the teeth? Well, it's because if you look at the Chinese meridians, which is what acupuncture is based on, if you look at the Chinese meridians, they have every meridian going to a tooth. So for instance, the heart meridian starts at the pinky here, goes up the arm, travels around the heart, then goes up to the wisdom tooth, then goes back to the heart and travels down the arm. So this is a constant flow of energy. So in acupuncture, we know about the heart meridian, we know about the gallbladder meridian, we know about the kidney meridian, and everyone goes to a tooth. Well, that tells me is that the teeth are incredibly important because they are attached to the organs in the body. So if you have a problem with, say, let's say tooth, we call it tooth number 13. That's the second bicuspid on the top. That tooth goes to the breast meridian on that side. Well, that's very interesting. So it's a second bicuspid on the upper left-hand side. It goes to the breast on the left side. So if you have a tooth, number 13, bicuspid meridian, breast meridian, and it has a problem, then that meridian is imbalanced in its energy.
So that's
the
the
energy
liver,
goes.
the breast,
It's
liver.
breast meridian. Yeah, the breast meridian goes to the second bicuspids up on top and the first molar. So you have energy from the breast that goes up and feeds those teeth. In return, the energy from those teeth come down and give energy to the breast. But if that upper tooth is root canaled, then it's a dead tooth. There is no energy coming out of it.
So
Anything that's dead in the body.
that connection?
Well, so then the breast suffers. The breast keeps sending out energy to the bicuspid and says, hey, wait a minute, this is not fair. I'm sending you energy constantly, and the energy that you're sending back to me is almost non-existent. And so it's an imbalance in the body. And
so
it's not a balance that
there is a disconnect then when a tooth gets removed, say for instance, and the breast meridian, that's the liver. I study acupuncture, so it leads to the liver. That's a major organ. So if there's a disconnect with the tooth being removed, how does it affect the liver?
Well, if the tooth is dead, there's a disconnect. But once the tooth is extracted and blood flows into the socket, and then as that blood starts to attach itself to the socket, then life is restored. Then there's energy again. Provided, and I have to give you this caveat, provided when the tooth is taken out, it's removed with no epinephrine. I know that's a big word, so what the heck is epinephrine? It's a chemical that is produced by your adrenal glands that cause your blood vessels to contract. Epinephrine is your fight or flight response drug. So if I see a tiger and I need to run very quickly away from this tiger, my adrenal glands will produce epinephrine and norepinephrine. It will make my heart beat faster. It will make my blood vessels contract, and so that my muscles will get good and tight and I can run as fast as I possibly can. That's a good thing. And then, of course, hopefully the tiger goes and finds something else to eat, or the lion finds something else to eat, and then everybody can relax again. Well, epinephrine is also synthetically made. When it's synthetically made, it's put in the little glass bottles of Novocaine that dentists give to patients. So they give you an injection with epinephrine in it, and they do that so that the patient will stay numb for a long period of time. Well, why does the patient stay numb? Because that same epinephrine, just like the epinephrine that was produced by your adrenal glands when you saw that lion, that same epinephrine causes your blood vessels to contract. And if the blood vessels contract, then when the dentist takes out the tooth, there's very little blood flowing. Now, most dentists actually like that. They like that there's very little blood flowing when they do surgery. It's not a good thing though, because that blood has to bring oxygen to the socket. It has to form a good clot. That clot has to attach to the bone. So long as a tooth is taken out without epinephrine, then you do have good blood flow to the socket and it does heal properly. Okay. And then the meridian, the energy is restored from that area through the liver. You know, a lot of the meridian pathways are like the highway systems in the United States. You know, yes, you can be on one highway and then all of a sudden part of the highway veers off to the right and it becomes another highway, right? But at one point they're both the same highway, right?
Yes.
So that's the way it is with the meridians. You have a meridian going from the bicuspid to the breast. Well, it's not just one single energy pattern. It's several energy patterns that all get involved with each other. I mean, that's the beauty of acupuncture. A good acupuncturist will look at the whole body and see where are the imbalances and work with all of those imbalances. Not just, they don't just treat just one thing. You know, we can't do that. That's kind of Western thinking is I have an ailment, there must be one diagnosis, and therefore there must be one pill to correct that problem. That's Western thinking.
Right.
And that's not the way it is. That's really not the way it is. Okay. So I think I have digressed a little bit. Forgive me. But let's kind of get back to the root canals because the dentist
let's
will
talk
always
about
say to you,
root canals.
okay, well, yeah, when you root canals, when the dentist will say to you, oh, you have a very big cavity and it's into the nerve of the tooth, you need a root canal.
Mhm.
Or maybe you got hit in the mouth and you fell and your face met the sidewalk and the front tooth broke in half and the nerve is exposed. The dentist will say, well, the nerve is exposed, you need a root canal. All right. Nobody needs a root canal. That's like saying you need a coffin. I don't want a coffin until I'm really, really dead. I want them to really make sure I'm dead, dead, dead before they put me in the coffin. Okay? Yeah. You don't need, at that point, if the tooth is dead, you don't need a root canal. What you need is an extraction.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So
So,
many
but
people here have asked is it healthy? Is it necessary? So you're saying no.
no, it's
Absolutely.
very, very unhealthy because you are maintaining, meaning keeping, a dead part of your body in the body.
Right.
Have you ever banged your nail or you know you kind of banged your toe on a door and oh man did that hurt and then the nail turned black, right?
Mhm.
That portion of the nail had separated itself from the blood flow underneath the nail bed. So
Right.
now that nail is dead tissue. Your body will naturally push that dead tissue out. Okay. Have you ever had an ingrown hair? Some people get them on the side of their face or, you know, anywhere you can get an ingrown hair. Well, that hair is not supposed to be inside your body. So your body will send lots of white blood cells and fluid to that ingrown hair. And the whole thing will get red. It'll hurt like the dickens. You'll hardly be able to touch it. And then when you finally, it either finally breaks on its own, this little bubble, or you get brave and you stick a sterile needle in the bubble.
Mhm.
And what happens? All the pus and fluid comes out, and this curly little hair comes flying out also. All right. That bubble is your body's attempt to get rid of something that doesn't belong inside.
Okay. Yep.
So when a tooth dies and there's no longer blood circulation going to the tooth, and there's no longer normal nerve innervation going to the tooth, and the tooth is dead, your body will do the same thing. It will send fluid to the area and it will send lots of white blood cells to the area. Those
Mhm.
white blood cells get inside the tooth, whatever bacteria are in there, they eat it all up. After that, so, and there's lots of bacteria that are still eating the inside of the tooth. There's a little bit of a war going on because it's very difficult for white blood cells to get inside of a tooth. The opening at the bottom of a tooth is incredibly small. In
Mhm.
some parts of the tooth, it's only a half micron wide. And your typical white blood cell is 8 to 10 microns. So that would be like somebody my size trying to get into a tube that's only this big. And I would keep banging my head against the wall trying to get in. So that's what happens. Eventually, everything inside the major portion of the nerve gets eaten up. And then the bacteria begin to do what we do. They eat nutrition, they eat the tooth, and then they go to the bathroom. That's what we do. We eat and then we go to the bathroom, right? And we pass gas. Well, bacteria do the same thing. They release whatever waste products they have from the metabolism of your tooth, and then they produce gas. That gas leaves the tooth and goes to the bottom. That's the point at which the person will say, whoa, I've got a serious toothache here. Oh my gosh, that hurts. I can't bite on it. I can't touch it. I think it's even swelling a little bit. That gas puts pressure on the bone dissolves with pressure, and before you know it, you go to the dentist and the dentist looks at the x-ray, sees this dark circle at the tip of the root of the tooth, and says, oh my gosh, you have an abscess, you need a root canal. That's the point at which you should say, no, I need to take this tooth out. You need to take the tooth out and clean up all the pus, all the gunk, all the fluid, everything that's there, and clean it well. That's what you need. Okay, the root canals just can never work. If you take a look at a tooth under the microscope, not what you see in your mouth. That's not the whole tooth. The tooth is 1/3 crown and 2/3 root. If you take that root and you slice it up and you look under a very powerful microscope, what you will see is that main nerve branches off to smaller nerves, and those smaller nerves branch off to other small nerves. So there's literally billions, I said billions and billions of nerve canals inside of a tooth. Billions of them. How is it possible for you to clean them all out and keep it sterile? You cannot. It is impossible. What the dentist does do is they drill a hole on the top of the tooth. They go down the main canal. They remove the main batch of nerves. They remove the main fluid areas. That's all they can do. And then they put these files in the tooth and they're shaking the files up and down, trying to clean that main canal. After they think they've cleaned the main canal, then they fill that main canal with a kind of a rubbery material. It comes off some tree in South Africa. South America. I used to remember the name of the tree. It was actually a board question. I no longer remember it. But so they fill it with this rubbery material, and then they put cement around that rubbery material. And that supposedly is going to seal off the canal. This is what the dentists believe happens. But we've looked at thousands and thousands and thousands of sliced root canal teeth. And that rubber seal fills the canal when it's hot. The minute it cools down, that rubber shrinks away from the walls of the main canal. Now you've got lots of room and space for bacteria to grow. And don't forget, we haven't even talked about all those side branches and those side canals. Those are places that still have some tissue in them, even though the tissue is not being fed. It's not getting any blood. It's not getting any oxygen. But there's tissue in there, so there's plenty of food for the bacteria to eat for probably a couple of years until the patient then, when they're done eating the inside of that tooth and they start producing gases at the bottom, then the patient knows they have an abscess. And it's impossible. You can clean that main canal. You can't keep it clean. Now, I know there are some dentists who say, well, I do a laser root canal. They call themselves biological dentists, by the way. And they say they do a laser root canal. And I say, oh, that's interesting. From what I learned about lasers are beams of light, very concentrated beams of light that only move straight. They do not make a right turn. They do not make a left turn. They don't curve. No. A laser can only go straight. So a dentist can put a laser down the main canal if the main canal is straight and kill the germs in the main canal. Can't do anything about the side canals.
Right.
Can't do a thing.
No sense.
And yeah, you cannot. Now there are biological dentists that say, I can do an ozone root canal for you. I'll clean out the middle of the canal, and then I'm going to put ozone gas. And that ozone gas is going to permeate the whole tooth and kill everything. Well, that ozone gas can go sideways, but it's certainly not going to kill the areas where there's still tissue there and there's still bacteria eating that tissue. It's not going to happen. But even if they could clean every canal, every little side canal, we're talking again, billions of canals. If they could clean every little canal with ozone gas, the moment they stop flowing the ozone gas, what happens? The bacteria march right back into the tooth.
Yeah. Right. And then, Dr. Blanche, then you'd fill it with amalgam or mercury.
Oh, God forbid.
And that just builds more bacteria and creates. So when I had my issue, I was one of those thousands where if you sliced it, you'd find, because I had an abscess that was so large. And thank God I'd found it, because I would not have known it existed. But there are three things that really I personally experienced when I had that inflammation. Was the toxicity was horrible. But then it triggered my immune system as well. So everything started shutting down. And then the third thing, interestingly, I wanted to bring this up when I was talking to you, was that whenever I had a phone call, I would feel a buzz in my trigeminal. And I felt like it was the Wi-Fi, the 5G, something was active, like the mercury fillings. But when I took them out, that electric sensation went away. Like that, the buzz in my head, I thought that was just something that was just me.
Did you miss it when it was gone? No?
I feel like it was like an antenna for something, not good.
Right. Well, I get a lot of patients who have implants, and they say it does feel like having an antenna, especially if it's a titanium implant. But then there's even some root canals, especially upper root canals, where if the dentist has a very difficult time getting into the canal because it's very narrow, it's really hard to push a piece of rubber inside something that's narrow. The rubber is going to bend, right? So what they do is they take a piece of metal, and I'm afraid to say some of them actually use paper clips. They take a piece of metal and they put the cement around the metal or the paper clip and shove that up the main canal. So that acts like an antenna in your brain. It really does. So, we have to remember that our immune system is designed to, number one, get rid of anything that's not you. And so that bacteria that are growing, and once they come out, I mean, they don't just stay inside the tooth, they come around to the outside into the bone. That bacteria is not you. Your body knows that, and it knows it's causing you trouble. And so your body will send anywhere from 100,000, 200,000, a ridiculous number of white blood cells to that tooth. Okay? So why is that a problem? Well, our immune system is a finite system. Like, remember I was talking about women are born with just so many eggs? It's a finite system. They're born with just so many eggs, and after that point, they're not going to have any more eggs. Whereas men can continue to produce sperm, that's an infinite system. Most people don't understand that our immune system is a finite system. You were born with just so many copies, good copies, of your white blood cells. So if your body is fighting a root canal tooth and it's sending 100,000 white blood cells to that tooth every single day, and they're dying. And then the next day it sends another 100,000. Then it sends another 100,000. And then one day you just happen to have a cancer cell develop in your left breast. And the body sends a signal to the white blood cells, says, red alert, cancer cell in the left breast, go send some natural killer cells and a bunch of white blood cells, get rid of those cancer cells. And the president of Spring University, he's really the one who's in charge of which white blood cells get out to work and which ones don't. The president of Spring University would say to the brain, listen, I can't send you 1 million white blood cells. Do you remember that root canal tooth in the upper left? Well, we've been fighting that root canal tooth for a good 10, 15, 20 years, and we've been losing 100,000 white blood cells every single day. And so now you want us to send 1 million white blood cells to the left breast? No can do. And I can send you, I can send you a few, but they're going to be very immature cells. They don't really know what they're doing, but they look good. Who wants that? You know, I just, you know, it's a free country. You can spend your white blood cells any way you like. Personally, I prefer to save my white blood cells for some serious things that might come down the pike.
So Dr. some people are asking, okay, well, if not a root canal, is there an alternative?
Then
extraction? Just an extraction. That's it. Okay, good.
Extraction. So now, but then after that heals, you're going to want to replace the tooth, right? So how do you replace the tooth? Well, it depends on where the tooth is. If the tooth is in the back or on the side, and there's a tooth in front of it, and there's a tooth behind it, well then, yes, you can have a bridge. Now, if you have a bridge, if you decide you want to have a bridge, that's probably the most preferred thing to do, because once the bridge is done, it feels like you're right back to where you were. It feels like your own tooth. Okay? So that's why people love bridges. I don't love bridges. The reason I don't love bridges is because you've got to recruit the tooth in the front and the tooth in the back to make that bridge. And if you could talk to those teeth and ask them, listen, I need a big favor from you. I know you had nothing to do with tooth number 12 being extracted, but you know, tooth number 13, I really need you. I want to hook a bridge onto you, and I want you to do your work and half of the work of tooth number 12. And then you go over to tooth number 11 and you say, you know what, tooth number 11, you're a beautiful tooth. I really like you. I'm going to cut you down to a little stub. I'm going to put a crown on you. And I want you after that to do your work plus half of the work of tooth number 12. Now, tooth number 11 and tooth number 13, are we all in on this? Yes? They would stare at you and say, what? No. I had nothing to do with tooth number 12 leaving. I'm not doing this because it's going to put me in jeopardy. So when you cut down a perfectly good tooth, and in order to make a crown, a dentist has to cut the tooth on all 5 sides. Now you heard me, I said 5. It's 1, the front, the back, the side, the other side, and then the top. So after the dentist has cut the tooth on all 5 sides, you have like a little peg. Now that little peg, while the dentist is cutting, is already being exposed to the saliva in the mouth and the bacteria in the mouth. You are already setting that tooth up for a shorter life expectancy. So that's my reason for not liking crowns. We have, thank God, we have these new materials called composites. The composites are bonded to teeth, which means we use like a bonding agent, or if you will, a glue, right? You can actually make a fake tooth for tooth number 12, and you can glue it to the side of tooth number 11 and the side of tooth number 13. Oh, well, that's just wonderful. We're not cutting down 2 perfectly good teeth. We are bonding the fake tooth to the 2 perfectly good teeth. That's a much better alternative because you're not cutting down good teeth. It
Mhm.
doesn't hold as well as what I call a conventional bridge, where you cut the teeth down completely. It doesn't hold as well. You might have to go to the dentist on a regular basis. Every time it separates, you have to go back to the dentist and get it re-cemented, re-bonded. Okay.
Mhm.
I think that's a small price to pay. I mean, as women, we go to the hairdresser every month, right? We don't bat an eyelash. Some women get their nails. I have a friend in Brazil who gets her nails done every week. She doesn't bat an eyelash.
So
So if you
yeah,
have one of these bridges, yeah, every 5 years you're going to have to pay $60, maybe $95 and get it rebonded. It's the best way to go. So that's pretty much covering a bridge. Okay. The second option is to have an implant put in.
Mhm.
Now, we used to do titanium implants, which was a metal, and it's a mixture of different metals because there's no such thing as pure titanium. It's a mixture of different metals. So the minute you stick that inside the socket, well, let me see. We've got 2, 3, 4 different kinds of metal in a wet saline solution. What's that? Oh, I know. That's a battery. So
Battery.
you're putting this titanium implant in somebody's jawbone. You've now created a battery coming from that implant out to the rest of their body. And anytime in the future that not only does it send those radio signals that I was telling you about before, not only do you get radio signals from this titanium implant, but when you have an x-ray taken, if you go to the dentist every 6 months and they take, usually at the very least, they'll take something called bite wings, where they look at cavities on the right side and the left side, 4 bite wings. Well, every time those radiation rays hit that implant, they scatter all over the place. They'll go to your thyroid, they'll go to your brain, they go everywhere. So
Mm.
that's reason number 2. One, it's metal and it creates a battery field, which affects your meridians, right? The meridian goes to that area and says, okay, Meridian, I've given you breast energy. How about you give me back some bicuspid energy? Well, oh, I'm sorry. I'm not a real bicuspid. I'm just a piece of metal. And I don't give out energy, meridian energy. I don't do that. I give out aberrant, what they call aberrant energy in all different places and conditions. That's what I do. I love to cause chaos. That's what I do best. So that's problem number 2 with an implant. Problem number 3 with an implant is that here we go. It's again not you.
Mhm.
So here's your immune system, which is trained, highly trained to recognize you, not you, you, not you. That's
Mhm.
what white blood cells do all day long. They fly around, swim around, and recognize, up, 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 wait a minute, I think I see something, not me, not me, definitely not me. So now
I have
that
a
white blood
question.
cell,
Dr. Blanche, what
excuse
about
me,
ceramic implants? How are they with osteointegration?
ceramic implants. Okay, let's go right to that because that's what most holistic dentists are doing now. They're doing
Yeah.
ceramic implants. So they stick the ceramic implant, which is a combination of aluminum and other stuff. It's not straight aluminum. It can't be. It's a very high percentage of aluminum. They put this inside the jaw. Again, it's a foreign substance. It's the same scenario. And we have a bigger problem with the zirconia implants, which is the crystal implants, in that when you first put them in, they don't adhere to the bone really well. So the dentist is almost obligated to put graft material. Okay, so where do they get this graft material? It's usually cadaver bone. Oh boy, now we got another whole issue. It's
Oh, wow.
cadaver bone, it's artificial bone, it's all kinds of stuff that they put inside the socket so that when they stick the implant in, it's a little bit tighter than it would be without the graft material. So if I could give you an analogy, imagine you're trying to put a fence around your property. You dig a hole, right? And you stick your post into the hole. The post is made out of wood. And you push the dirt inside there and you leave it sit there. Okay.
Mhm.
Somebody said zirconia is a metal, not a ceramic. Zirconia is a ceramic. Zirconium is the metal.
Oh,
Okay, get that straight. Zirconium is the metal. Zirconia is the ceramic.
okay.
The ceramic comes from the metal. Okay, they put it under high pressure, high temperature, and you get zirconia, a crystal. It's the closest thing to alchemy we have. It really is. Okay, so getting back to our post analogy, if I put a post in the ground and it's made out of wood, it's just a matter of time before the bacteria in the dirt will eat up the wood and the wood will rot and then the post will fall down and there goes my fence, right? But if I make a little bigger hole and I fill that hole with concrete, now I can put my post in the middle of the concrete, and it's going to take years and years and years for the bacteria that are in the dirt to get through the concrete to my wooden post. So that's the reason why when a dentist is doing a zirconia implant, ceramic implant, they put graft material in. Your immune system is going to have to deal with the graft material way, way, way before it gets to the post or the zirconia implant. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
All right. It's going to take a long time. So that's why all the dentists now use graft material, because they know their implant is going to be more successful.
Sure.
But don't be fooled for 1 second to think that there is not a war going on. There's still a war going on. The war is just further away from the implant. It's now dealing with the graft material. And there was a situation once where Dr. Huggins had asked me if I could find for him the absolute best, most sterile piece of cadaver bone on the planet. And I did that for him. I said, yeah, I would do anything for him. I said, sure, let me go do some research. And I researched, and finally I came up with a company that absolutely had the best, most sterile cadaver bone.
Okay.
I bought it for Dr. Huggins. I sent it to his lab in Colorado Springs. And unfortunately, it got there a little late. He was just getting ready to send a whole bunch of samples to the laboratory to be tested. And that cadaver bone didn't make it. So they took the cadaver bone, they put it in the petri dish, and they stuck it in the refrigerator. Now, this refrigerator is very, very cold. This refrigerator is minus 70 degrees Celsius. Minus 70 degrees Celsius. They called it deep 7. So the lab tech took it and put it in the refrigerator, and everybody promptly forgot about it. Then one day, Dr. Huggins asked, hey, whatever happened to that bone sample that Blanche sent us? And, oh, you mean whiskers? Whiskers? Why did you call it whiskers? He said, oh, because we've been watching it. It's growing whiskers. Now, this is supposedly the most sterile piece of cadaver bone that I could possibly find. And weeks later, it was growing whiskers. So, I mean, it's just impossible to sterilize something like a piece of human bone and expect it to stay sterile. It's not going to happen. Our human body is a very dynamic body. In other words, things are always moving. Things are always going in every which direction. There's no such thing as something stagnant in the human body. As a matter of fact, even if your blood flow was to slow down in a certain area of your bloodstream, it's curving around a rock in a river. Well, on the other side of that rock, you're going to find more algae and more bacteria growing, right? Same thing in the body. You have an area where the blood is flowing just a little bit slower than in other places, or a little bit slower than it should be flowing. You're going to have bacteria colonizing on the other side of that curve. Okay? There's no such thing as a stagnant part of the body. So when you put a zirconia implant, get ready for the war. Now, if you're young and suppose you're 21 years old, you're a really good-looking guy. Oh, you're so good-looking, people have asked you to model magazines. Okay? And you're playing basketball with your friends, and one of your friends hits you in the mouth and knocks your front tooth out. You're 21 years old. 21-year-old is probably not going to want to wear a denture.
Mhm.
So somebody like that, I may say, I don't know if I would. I'll have to think about that. I may put a single implant in a 21-year-old for a front tooth, but then tell them, listen, the day you get married, you find Miss Wonderful, tell her you have to take your front tooth out. Get rid of it. Because as we get older, our body has a harder time fighting the things that it's supposed to be fighting. That's just the
Yeah.
way it is.
So
Okay.
we've
Any other
talked so
questions?
far, yeah, we've talked about root canals, implants.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit to close out because we don't have too much time, and your time is so valuable. We really appreciate you being here with this community. But let's talk more about prevention, the nutrition aspect of, because this is a very focused nutrition
Yeah.
community. How do we prevent all
Okay.
these things so that, there's a lot of questions in the chat, Dr. Blanche. Any one of them, if you'd like
Right.
to go with
Okay.
as well.
Well, nutrition is such an easy subject. It really is. Stop eating sugar. I'll say it again. Stop eating sugar. Sugar is, do you know that if you look at the chemical configuration of sugar and look at the chemical configuration of morphine and codeine, all those drugs that people use for pain, there's very little difference. It's like maybe one carbon and hydrogen molecule. That's it. It's an incredibly addictive substance.
Mhm.
If I had a magic wand and I could eliminate sugar from the planet, I think you probably close half the hospitals within 30 days. No kidding. So that's
Yeah.
number one. Eliminate sugar in the diet. Number two,
Well,
eat
before that,
whole foods.
Weston Price was
Yes.
one of the first biological dentists, and he was the one studying about, and that's what I loved. He kind of went into the dentistry with that mindset because he was looking at indigenous
Right.
tribes, how many were eating zero sugar, no refined flours, and they had full sets of
No.
teeth, and those who didn't. So yes, number one, no sugar. Mhm.
Number one, no sugar. And as soon as they added sugar to the diet of these indigenous tribes, they started getting cavities. And then the next generation came with their jaws narrow, and they couldn't even fit all their teeth.
Right, crowded
So
teeth, impacted
yes,
wisdom. Is that normal? Is that something that is also connected to
that's not normal.
our
No, we're
nutrition?
supposed to have, God isn't stupid. He designed us to have 32 teeth because we're
Mhm.
supposed to have room for 32 teeth. People
Mhm.
don't have room. You hear orthodontists tell people that they tell the parents horrible things. They say, oh, your child has large teeth and the teeth are too big for your child's head. What a horrible thing to say to somebody. You think your kid has got a deformed head or something.
Right.
No, the kid didn't get enough nutrition for their head to form and develop as well as it should have.
Okay.
So when
So you're
somebody doesn't have room for their teeth, yeah, they're suffering from nutrition. And it's not always their fault directly. There's something called Pottinger's Cats. Everybody should read that book, and you can get it from the Price Foundation. Pottinger's Cats. What Pottinger did was he took a group of kittens and deprived them of meat, gave them terrible food to eat.
Mhm.
And in 4 generations, the kittens could not walk. They had bone deformities. They were a mess. Simply 4 generations. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, so when did Twinkies come out? And when did Cheerios come out? And when did Fruit Loops come out? In the 1950s and 60s.
Mhm.
So who the kids being born today are the fourth generation.
Right.
They're the fourth generation eating this crappy food that doesn't help them develop at all.
I love
Okay, so you have to eliminate sugar. You have to eat as much organic food as you possibly can. Because when food is not organic and it has pesticides and chemicals added to it, your body recognizes that as a foreign substance and it doesn't use it in the areas that it's supposed to be used in. And so that brings me to why almost all of us have to supplement because our
Mhm.
soil doesn't have the nutrients in it anymore that it has. Our food, even though it may say it's organic, maybe that food grew right next to a farm that was owned by Monsanto. And the wind blows and the chemicals blow, and you're really not getting pure organic food. So we have to take supplements today. We really do. And that's why I love Purium. I mean, they have the finest products on the planet. All right. I mean, so it's just something that, you can't move the clock back. And I've had vegetarians tell me, oh, but wait a minute, we were designed to eat fruits and vegetables. Adam and Eve were in the garden. Yeah, that's true. Adam and Eve were designed to eat fruits and vegetables, not us. After the flood, and Noah and his family came out of the flood, what was the first thing God said to him? Now you will eat meat. Because the earth had been devastated. And he knew the human race would not survive. And it had to survive long enough to bring Jesus Christ along, right? It had to survive. So God said, you know what? Go ahead and eat meat. It's highly concentrated. Yes, I know it's highly concentrated. It's going to be difficult for your intestines to digest it. And gosh, if you mix it with sugar, you're going to be farting all afternoon. I'm sure he gave them the details. Within the Bible doesn't give us the details. It just says he told Noah that we could eat meat. Yes, it doesn't mean it's the ideal food for us to eat, but it is what we need right now. If you go on a strict vegetarian diet, you are lacking some of the things you need. And I don't like getting into arguments with vegetarians and vegans, but our bodies are not evolving. Everybody thinks that believes there's evolution and our bodies are evolving. No, they're not. Our bodies are devolving.
Yeah.
They get every generation getting worse.
We're coming at the hour, and Dr. Blanche, there's just a few.
I just now got to look at some of the questions here.
Yeah.
How does how does the tooth die without an impact? The tooth can die from decay. Doesn't need an impact. A tooth can die from an orthodontic wire being given too much pressure too fast, and the tooth can die. Let's see, what else do we have? I can answer just quickly.
Any way to reestablish connection?
Is there any way to reestablish connection of a tooth that has been extracted without freezing? No, there is no way to reestablish the connection of a tooth. We were told in dental school that when a kid loses a tooth, quick, pick it up off the ground, stick it in a glass of milk, and run to the dentist and bring it, and they can put the tooth back in and put some wires on and hold it in place. That's a dead tooth. It's been severed from its main nerve and blood supplies. It's a dead tooth. Okay, so no, you cannot reset. You know what? They're trying to grow teeth now, and I'd love to finish up on this because there is some hope here. They're growing teeth now with stem cells. They gather enough stem cells, they inject it into the jaw of an animal, and in 9 weeks, they're growing a tooth. But the tooth looks like a cauliflower, and it doesn't have nerve innervation. Isn't that interesting? So the body is trying to make a tooth, but it doesn't have the frequency anymore, the energy from the meridians anymore. That's what they're missing. If they could get together with a bunch of holistic people and add the energy in the meridians, they might be able to grow a tooth. That's my hope, that they can grow a tooth that also attaches itself to the nerves in the bottom of the jaw or the nerves in the top of the jaw.
Like stem cells. Right.
And so if it's your stem cells, then you're going to grow your tooth. And your body says, yeah, I'm fine with this itself. Okay.
And we're trying to speed up things because there's so many good questions, and this is a recurring question.
Yeah.
How can
anyone have a tooth pulled with no Novocaine? I don't think you can, but you don't want epinephrine in the Novocaine. There's the difference. You want Novocaine with no epinephrine. So here's one of those situations where you have to tell a little lie. It's called a Rachel lie in the Bible. A little lie, like when Rachel told the people in Jericho that they asked her, where are the Jews? We saw the Jews come here. And she said, no, I don't see any Jews. There's no Jews. The Jews were hiding in her closet. But she said, no, that's a good lie. When you can lie and save somebody's life, that's a good lie. So when you go to the dentist, you have to tell a good lie. You have to say to the dentist, please don't give me any epinephrine, because whenever I get a shot with epinephrine, my heart rate goes up to 250 beats per minute. And the doctor is going to go, oh, really? 250 beats per minute? Oh my gosh, I don't want a medical emergency in my chair. Okay, no epinephrine for you. And you tricked him into not giving you any epinephrine. That's wonderful. You'll still get Novocaine, but you get Novocaine without epinephrine. Okay, let's see.
Love that lie.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good lie. Yeah.
I
She
think
says,
we're
"Can you spell epinephrine?" It's in the chat. It's spelled correctly.
I
Yeah.
think that's all the time we have, Dr. Blanche.
Oh, that went so
I,
fast.
the
We didn't
hour,
even get to cavitations. We have to do cavitations next.
yeah, and I don't want to stop you. You just really need to tell the stories and all the metaphors you've shared, really make it come to life. And I really appreciate your
Thank
perspective and
you.
teach, because this community really is all about prevention. They want to do the best for
Right.
them and their family.
Right.
So
Yeah. And if you have children, little children, it's the mom's responsibility to brush the child's teeth. It's not the child's responsibility to brush their teeth. It's the mom's and the dad's.
until what age do you think that's
When the
that?
child can brush and design their own hair style.
Okay.
Okay, when they can brush their hair and design their own and put their own ponytail in, that's when they can brush their own teeth. Before that, no. The parents need to brush the teeth every single day, after breakfast and before bed. Absolute must. I mean, those two things, if you eliminate sugar and you brush the teeth twice a day, your child shouldn't have any cavities unless they're really deficient in minerals, because mom didn't eat minerals and grandma didn't eat minerals and they were all eating Twinkies and potato chips. So yeah, then you might have a problem. But that's where the Purium nutrition comes in. You can build your child's nutrition up at a very early age. Start them early. Start them early so that maybe the baby teeth won't be great, but their second teeth will be fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Okay.
Love it.
You can tell I'm passionate about this. I could talk for hours. Absolutely. I can talk for hours.
Gosh, there's so many more questions coming in, but we have to just defer to saying we're complete because corporate actually does want us to end now too. But
Okay.
prevention
Right.
is key.
Yeah,
And
prevention's key.
look up the website that I just sent in the chat. It's her link to her site. And then you can look at her YouTube. She talks more about in-depth
Right.
questions about education on these different topics more in depth.
Right. And go
So
to Amazon and get the book, Chew on This, But Don't Swallow, by Dr. Blanche Grube and Anita Tabau.
yes, and if you vote for her to come back and talk more, we can do that too. So
Okay, great.
thank you again,
Vote
Dr.
for me. Vote for me. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, Carmela. I really enjoy doing this. I really do.
pleasure's mine. I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you.